I'm Sherry Kendall, and welcome to Hometown Salutes. Today, I want to introduce my guest. It's veteran Jim Thomas. Welcome, Jim, to the show.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Were you born and raised here?
Yes, I was born and raised here in Connersville, went to school here, graduated in 1962.
Okay. So did you get drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted.
So how was that day you received that letter?
That was a, well, it was a rough day because nobody wanted to go in the service at that point in time because it just wasn't Vietnam was rocking and rolling, and most people I knew didn't want to go. And so I was drafted.
So how did your family, your parents, everybody supportive? I mean, they had to be, but...
Oh, you had no choice.
Right.
And you had a 4-year deferment.
Okay.
Before you had to go. Or if you were going to school, you could get 4 years. And I pretty much burnt mine up going to night school, night college. And if you're a college student, you didn't get drafted. If you were married, you didn't get drafted. So I went to night school, but used up the 4 years, got drafted, and ended up in the Army.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Army is what you chose?
I didn't choose it; they chose me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so the day that you left, did you go to Indianapolis and then get bused somewhere?
Went to Cincinnati.
Cincinnati, okay.
To the induction center, and from there went to Fort Knox for training, basic training. That was a couple months, and then.
So how was basic training? Because how old are you?
I was 22.
Okay.
I was older.
Yep.
Because of going to school, and basic was. It was just 8 weeks of, trying to kill you, and lost some weight there, so I gained weight after school, and I was about 210, dropped down to about 195.
Oh, wow.
In basic, and then went to advanced infantry school training.
And where was that at?
That was at Fort Lewis, Washington.
Okay.
In the rainy season. It rains out there for a couple, 3 months, and we were out there in rain, so we trained every day in the rain. And dropped from 195 to maybe 180. That was a 3-month deal. Learned to shoot every Army weapon there was, how to use them. And after that, went to officer candidate school.
Oh, wow.
For 6 months.
Okay.
So.
And where was that at?
Fort Sill, Oklahoma. In the summer and winter. It was a 6-month deal, and 6 months of misery. No weekends off, nothing, just 7 days a week training for 6 months. And they did try to kill you. And started with 200 guys in my group, and I think about 85 got commissions. So more than half of them got thrown out.
Wow, is this one of the days? Is this when you got commissioned here?
Yeah, that's my graduation.
Okay. So what was a day like? Like, you'd start at what time and end at what time? Because you said you never had a day off.
For officer candidate school, you got up before the sun got up. It'd be about 5 in the morning. And then you trained all day. We ran every place that we were going. Classes, and because we had class instruction in artillery, how to fire it, how to program. And then outside of classroom, we had field exercises where we would go out with the guns and train and fire them and learn how to hit targets and how to work on them. And so that was every day. We had escape and evasion classes where there's a little bit of a funny story. Escape and evasion in officer candidate school. So they wanted you to know how to survive if you got separated. So they threw you out in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma, and they had aggressors out there. And the aggressors were returning Vietnam vets who had a couple months left in their tour, in their service time. So they were angry. They wanted to go home, but they got this 2-month assignment to be aggressors, to go out and catch potential officers. You know,
Oh,
it was
wow.
fun for them, not fun for us. Anyway, they caught you, threw you into a prisoner of war camp where they treated you really bad. And that's where about 25% of the people dropped out, because they did try to mess you up there. And anyway, got through all that. And that's, you know, between firing classes, physical training, and after 6 months of that, I lost the rest of my weight. I dropped from 185, well, about 175 when I went in to officer training school. Dropped down to 147.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, and a 29-inch waist, and could run all day long.
Wow.
All day long, full pack, take off, and run for hours. I was in that kind of shape.
Wow. So you finished your specialized schooling and got commissioned. So then what happened at that point?
Went to Colorado Springs,
Oh, okay.
Fort Carson, Colorado, as my first assignment as an officer. And that's where I got really introduced to the big guns. And in the officer candidate school, we mostly used 105s, little artillery, you know, to learn how to do it. When I got to Fort Carson, I got assigned to a unit with 8-inch and 175 heavy artillery. And they shot, the 8-inch shot 16 miles, the 175 could shoot around 21 miles. And big, nasty machines, heaviest artillery the Americans we had. And so I learned how to shoot those, how to work on them as an officer, and they made me the battalion maintenance officer in Colorado, or Fort Carson. So sent me back to Fort Knox for 2 months of heavy track training, mechanic, and came back and did that for a year at Colorado Springs, Fort Carson, and then got orders for Vietnam.
Okay.
So
So how long were you in Vietnam?
a year.
A year.
Yeah, everybody back then, Army, had a 1-year tour of duty. And you rotated in by yourself. You came out by yourself. So, unlike all, I think Korea was that way too. But World War II, everybody came back together. You know, went in as a unit, came out as a unit. We went in individually.
Wow.
And so you rotated out. And the people that were there, by the time you left, everybody you met at first was already gone. So you didn't really establish long-term relationships.
So you were literally by yourself.
You're kind of by yourself.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us what happened your first day?
The first day was interesting.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
I had dual assignments. I was a battalion maintenance officer, and because of that, I had a helicopter and a pilot to take me around all the fire bases, because the artillery was out in the boonies. They were out in the middle of nowhere, on mountaintops, and you know. Anyway, first day on the job, I go down to the helipad, and there's my little helicopter. It's an OH-13. It's a little bubble glass like you saw in the TV show MASH.
Yeah.
2-seater, you know, no weaponry, observation helicopter. So there's a mechanic working on the thing in an old nasty looking jumpsuit, and I show up and I said, where's the pilot? He said, he'll be here shortly. So okay. So he said, once you get in, get strapped in, do your commo checks. So I had to call the Fire Direction Center and also the air traffic and air controller, and because we had 2 radio frequencies, and so I get in, strapped in, radio on, and this guy's cleaning the windshield, you know, and kid, I mean, he was a little kid, and so he jumps in and says, I'm going to start it up and warm it up, because when he gets here, he's going to be ready to go. So okay, fine. So he gets in, starts it up, gets it warm, gets the rotors going, gets the RPM up, and I'm thinking, you know, where's the damn pilot? I'm ready to go. And this kid, red-haired, freckle-faced, 19-year-old boy, pulls the rotor lever up, and the helicopter takes off, straight up, hits the rotor pedal, spins it, and we're going up in the air like a corkscrew, up to about 1,000 feet. He's yelling on the phone, microphone. I'm about ready to kill him, and so anyway, he takes control of the ship, steadies it up, lands it. He's the pilot. He was the pilot. He was breaking me in, and we were both screaming all the way up, and
I would have been scared to death.
I was scared to death. I mean, I didn't like being there in the first place.
Right.
And wasn't sure I liked the assignment. And I didn't like the helicopter because it was, you know, we had, you know, cars back here in Connersville that had bigger engines and faster. But turned out he was a good pilot. He was a great kid. And for those who don't know much about that war, because they don't teach it anymore. It's not in the books. Kids aren't learning about it. We're destined to repeat it. But that war was fought by 19-year-olds. 19 and 20-year-olds. Average age was somewhere between 19 and 20.
Yeah.
And anyway, so much about that. But that was my first day. And then from then on, we flew every day.
So, like, you had special missions?
The primary mission of the unit I was with, heavy artillery, was not particularly accurate. The 8-inch was more accurate, but you fired those puppies, they go 21 miles. You don't know where it's coming down in a general range. Our mission was to fire every night what was called harassment and interdiction fire to disrupt the flow of military and arms and weapons and people down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So we fired on that every night.
Oh, wow.
Every morning I would go out in my little helicopter and we'd fly the Ho Chi Minh Trail to see what we hit, if anything, and check the targeting. And then at night coming back to base camp, we'd fly the Ho Chi Minh Trail going north to pick out target for the next night, target assignments.
Because they would move nightly?
Oh, yeah. They moved every night. And
so that would change constantly?
Changed every day. Changed every day. So, but that's what our heavy artillery did. H&I, harassment and interdiction.
Okay.
And
I thought it was funny when we first talked earlier, you said when you joined the Army, there was 3 branches, or 3...
Yeah, they offered me 3 choices for officer candidate school.
Yeah.
Armor there at Fort Knox, where I was, should have taken it. Infantry, and then artillery. And I was trying to be smart, and I thought, where am I going to survive? And I thought, well, I know the infantry is going to be right in the middle of it. Don't want to do that.
Right.
And armor, I've seen the John Wayne movies, and tanks is not a good place either.
Right.
And I think, well, I'll do artillery. They're always way back. There's a way back firing, you know. And turns out Vietnam, different war. All the armor 98% of it went to Germany.
Ugh.
So if I'd gone armor officer, I'd
Right.
have spent all my time in Germany. Infantry, they had tough duty because they were on the ground, but when they weren't on a mission, they were back along the beach, en masse, tens of thousands of them, and when they had something to do, they'd fly them out in helicopters, drop them, terrible assignments, bad jobs. When they got their job done, they would go pick them up, take them back to the beach. Heavy artillery was out in the middle of nowhere.
You just got dropped.
You went out with Seabees making a road for you to get your guns out there. And then, so we were out in the boonies. We had to do our own perimeters, do our own security at night. And so we were the furthest out into the hazardous areas. And so I made a bad choice, bad decision. Should have gone armor,
So do you ever have a scary situation that you'd want to talk about?
Not really. I mean, we got shot at a few times. And the thing I'll point out, this was a crazy war.
Yes, it was.
It was fought by idiots, not the army, not the military, the politicians. Long story short, our rules of engagement was you couldn't shoot at something until they shot at you. You had to take fire before you could fire back. It's like giving somebody the first punch.
Exactly.
And that was the rules of engagement. So the scariest thing I probably did, truthfully, was we flew treetop for relative speed and also to draw fire. Because if they'd be on the ground and we'd go over them, treetop level, sometimes they actually try to fire on us.
Yeah.
Most of them too smart to do that because they knew we could bring it in on them. But, we would do fishing expeditions, to try to get somebody to shoot at us. And that's crazy. But that was our rules of engagement made up by the politicians.
Yep. And you're just
Makes me angry still.
I'm sure you're
to
just a kid.
To think about it.
Yeah.
But that whole thing was a mess because of politicians.
Yep. And you guys were treated bad coming back. I mean.
Well, let me correct you right there.
Okay.
On a broad base, that's true. Not treated well coming back. Because it was such a despised war
Right.
that most of the American population that weren't military were really against it. Protests and college protests.
Right.
So for some reason that mentality blamed the American soldier. And they didn't treat them well when they came back. The good news was I grew up in Connersville, Indiana. Indiana is a conservative state. It is probably one of the nicest places to live in terms of a place to live. Connersville was decent to me coming back. Actually nice. My old friends were still my old friends. The adults that I knew in town welcomed me back, But coming back out of Vietnam into the United States, landed in Fort Lewis, Washington area, flew out of Seattle, Tacoma to come home. Mm-hmm. Had to wear a uniform to get military discount. 75% or 25% discount. Had to wear a uniform. Had to go to the airport in uniform. People were kind of rude. People glared at you. Went into a bar to get a cold beer because I hadn't had a cold beer in a long time, and bartender wouldn't serve me.
Wouldn't serve you?
Wouldn't serve me, and that's a military town. Would not serve me, and this old guy that's sitting at the bar said, "What do you want, soldier?" And I said, "I just want a cold beer," you know. And he ordered it and paid for it. But the bartender wouldn't serve me. And a few other people would glare and shake their head and crap like that. But I don't know how they made that American population made that transition from not liking the war to blaming the American soldier.
Right, because you had no choice.
I had no choice.
You were doing your job.
Did my job, and
Yeah.
you know, but it's unlike most wars,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And so the Vietnam vet has always had that stigma.
Right.
Still does, to a degree. Now people will, you know, if they know you're a vet, you know, they'll say thank you for your service,
Right.
you know. And so it's starting to turn, but most of all the Korean War guys are gone. World War II guys are gone. Vietnam guys are getting old. I'm getting old, you know. So it's just, it was a mess.
That's really unfortunate.
Yep, okay, go ahead.
So, were you able to stay in touch with any of your military buddies?
No,
No?
no. It was pre-internet.
Right.
You know, I mean, this was I got home in December of '69, so internet was still a long ways away. And because you went one by one, I mean, I probably knew and worked with a couple hundred guys in that year I was there, different guys, and they all left and went back to Colorado and New York and California and from all over the country.
Right.
And so you didn't really keep in touch, and so I really don't have a whole lot of people that I know that I knew.
Right.
So it wasn't that kind of deal.
When you were over there, did you say there was some kind of entertainment?
Yes.
Can we touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, we were quite fortunate. We had a couple troops come through to entertain us, groups, and we were in the boondocks, so most of them wouldn't come out to see us or show for us. And we had a Korean group that would come into where we were out in the middle of nowhere, fly out in helicopters, put on a show, singing American music, and girls, singers, and which was entertaining because we hadn't seen, you know, girl entertainers here in a long time. And so they came out and put on a show, really appreciated it. And then we had an Australian group who came out and stayed for 4 or 5 days.
Wow.
Because they didn't have the next place to go. They had to get approval to go places for security reasons. So they came out and stayed with us in the middle of nowhere, and we put an attachment of security around those girls.
Wow.
And protected them like they were our daughters, you know, because they're kids.
Right.
But they had the guts to come out there and do that.
I can't even imagine that.
You know, yeah, right in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
In a war zone. You know, it was just amazing, and really appreciated it. All the guys appreciated it, and to this day, I have a great fondness for both the Korean population, Korean people, and certainly the Australians, because they were crazy.
Huh.
I mean, they'd do anything.
You want to tell us about?
My Jeep?
Yep.
Well, I had a Jeep for back where we had more vehicles and the guns, and our guys, mechanics, Spec 4s, 19-year-old kids, decided to make me a Jeep because I was their commanding officer, and I didn't pay attention to it. They were out working on it at night, and they finally got it done, drove it up, and said, "We got your Jeep done." I said, "Okay." So I went out, and I didn't get to drive it. I always had a driver.
Okay.
And he said, "You got to drive this thing." I said, "Okay." So I get in, start it up. wasn't a normal Jeep. Did not have the little 4-cylinder, 70 horsepower engine in it. They had found a V8 and with a V8 transmission out of some kind of a truck, and put that thing in my Jeep, and it would run. It was scary. And so I was a battalion maintenance officer with my own private Jeep that outrun anything in the Army. And the kids had done that just
That's
for fun.
hysterical. That's funny.
It was, I don't know what happened to it. It was a running machine.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So you came back in what year?
December of '69.
Okay. So and you came back to here, to Connersville?
Came back to Connersville.
And what did you do then? Tell us about your family and what you did.
Oh boy, okay. Well, got hired at Roots Blower as a personnel supervisor. Worked there 10 years, got married to a young lady from Liberty, Cheryl Finch Thomas now, and we just celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary.
Oh, wow.
A couple weeks ago. And so after I got out of the Army, a couple years later, married Cheryl, and have 3 kids, 5 grandkids, and feel very fortunate. And a lot of my career success, I believe, was due to skills and experiences I did have in the military.
From the service?
Yep. I went in as a private, no college degree. With the GI Bill when I got out, I actually finished my college degree, got a bachelor's degree in business at IU. Military paid for it.
Yep.
And still had GI Bill educational benefit left, which paid decent money, but it paid the classes. And so I went ahead with my GI Bill, got a master's degree in business from Ball State. And so I got a good education out of the military. I still have VA benefits. I still go to, or I do, go to the little clinic up in Richmond,
Yep.
which is a great place. They really help and do their very best. And been going there since I retired because when I was working, I had good benefits.
Right.
When you retire, you not so
Yeah.
much.
Changes.
And, changes. And so
That's awesome.
I go up there and I get all my blood work done free. Most of it doesn't cost me anything.
Yep.
So I was exposed to Agent Orange. So I glow at night, like most Vietnam vets.
Right.
And so the VA medical has been very much benefit to me.
That's great.
So
That's
I appreciate those guys. So
Well, wow. Well, Jim, I want to thank you for taking the time out and sharing your story with us today.
Yep,
I want to thank you for your service and your sacrifice.
yep, I appreciate it.
So be sure to tune in next month for another edition of Hometown Salutes.